Hi, everybody, and welcome to the first 2022 Film Prize University live stream session presented by the Prize Foundation, which is made possible by a generous grant from Louisiana Entertainment, which is a division of the Office of Louisiana Economic Development, and supported by our partners at LFEA, that's the Louisiana Film and Entertainment Association, as well as the other many amazing sponsors of the Prize Foundation. I'm Chris Lyon. I'm a professional filmmaker. It's what I do for a living. And then I also work with the Prize Foundation. I've been a part of the Prize Foundation since the very first year in 2012. This year, we're celebrating our 11th anniversary doing a film prize. It's very exciting. In this course, we're going to be talking about story, which is about conceiving the concept for your film. We have 8 classes in the course. And we're going to get more onto what's happening tonight in a moment, but I do have a few announcements to make. First of which is that our next class is going to be Wednesday, February 9th at 7 p.m. It's going to be all about writing, turning your ideas into words. So we're going to take what we learned tonight and we're going to start working on the script next class. So again, that's Wednesday, February 9th at 7 p.m. I want to introduce Melissa Goslin. She's a fantastic filmmaker. She went to Cambridge, got her degree in writing, and she taught at LSU in Baton Rouge screenwriting. And now she's a top 5 finalist for the film prize that happened in 2021 with her film Memento. It's a fantastic little short. I can't wait for her to talk more about it. But without me saying any more about Melissa at all, I do want to bring her up to the stage and have her tell us a little bit more about herself. Melissa, why don't you come on up?
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me. I have to say, this is making me really want to, I'm like jealous. I wish I was at this point last year when we were just thinking about Memento and like making a short film, because we decided we weren't going to make one this year. Now I'm like regretting all of that. I'm like, no, I just want to make a film. I want to like get off of here and go make one. A little bit about me. And I know people here, I think that are here are talking about making a short film and might have different levels of experience dealing with story or with storytelling. I went to school for English, for film, for all of these things have just always been my interest. But then I worked professionally for years and years in for a military contractor, making videos and things like that. Doing technical writing. I've worked as a freelance writer for magazines, newspaper columns, documentaries, so across a lot of different things. So what I really want to talk about today is just storytelling and those things that really you can break a story down to across any of those, and then specifically how we can use that for a short film, since that's what everyone's going to make. So if that sounds good, we'll get started. So just like I said, about this time last year, I was gearing up with my team, working on a script, getting ready to make the short film Memento. You can see the poster behind me. And it was one of the best decisions of my life. It really was. It was such a fun time. I challenged myself to do that, challenged the people around me, our team. We learned more about storytelling, about ourselves, about each other, than I really think we could have doing anything else, honestly. So my first step that I would recommend, honestly, is exactly what I did, which is like call the smartest, funniest person you know and say, hey, you want to make a film with me? Which is what I did. And I ended up with a great co-writer who was also one of my friends, Elizabeth Beauvais. And we started on this journey of what story do we want to tell? And these are the things that I think, like right now, as looking to make a film, are the things that I would recommend you asking yourself. What do you want to say? Why are you telling this story? So what story do you want to tell? Or really not even what story you want to tell, but what do you want to say? Why are you telling that story? And what resources do you have? Those are the places where we started. So we said, what do we want to say? We were in the middle of COVID home learning, where we had virtual learning. We both had kids. And so we really wanted to tell the story of how hard it was to be a mom, how hard momming is in the modern world. We started with just our day-to-day experience and what was going on with us. We actually started the reason that we ended up picking film as a medium we wanted to work in and work together and collaborate with, we started just taking these like found footage videos and sending them back and forth to each other from our closets, from wherever we were in the car with the kids. We would just have a second and we would take these videos and send them back and forth to each other. So that's kind of where we started with our idea. And the what do you want to say, really, we'll come back to that a little bit as a theme. So the good news, I think, for you now, I know a lot of people are saying, I have an idea, I have a story, I'm not sure how to tell the story or how to translate it into a film, is if you really think about it, that everyone is a storyteller. Every one of you, everyone that you know, knows how to tell a story. It's as simple as, what did you do today? If I ask you that question, what did you do today? You're going to start somewhere and say, oh, you know, you may not start with, I woke up this morning and then I did this, but you're going to say, I went to work, this happened, or I was at the grocery store, the funniest thing happened. You're going to tell a story about it. So what is a story, and how do we tell a good story or an effective story? So I would start, my personal definition of story, which we're going to talk a lot about story, is that it's a character moving through a world where things happen over time. And that's something, I don't know if that exact definition I ever saw before, but it's just kind of the pieces that I think are always there. So a character moving through a world where things happen over time. And I'm going to break each one of those things down a little bit so that we're going to talk about character, we're going to talk about the world, and then what it means that things happen over time, which really gets more into plot and the structure particular to a short film. So, and then what makes a good story? So that's a story, but what is the difference we're going to talk about between your uncle, who, you know, no one wants to hear from at Thanksgiving, when he starts to go, you know what, it's a funny story, and everyone's like, this is not going to be, I can promise you it's not going to be a funny story, versus like a Jerry Seinfeld who gets up on stage and starts talking and everyone's just can't wait to hear what he has to say or to tell the story, is that the components are crafted to make the audience feel something. And that crafted part, for me, I know has been a really important thing for me to understand, that it is a craft, that it is going to be, there's a little bit of a formula or a way in to do that. And what is your way in to start crafting? Well, we said, like, there's a character, there's a world, and things happen over time. So really, the character is one way to get into the story. If you have an idea for a character that's just really interesting and intriguing, and you say, you know, this is somebody I would want to follow through the day and see what happens to them. That's a way in. There's also the world. You know, if especially sci-fi, I always think of sci-fi when we think of world building, but there are other things too. Something like think of like a Dance Moms or Toddlers and TR, a lot of reality show, you know, they have these sort of different worlds where you go in and just want to take a look and see what happens in this world. And then the things happen. There's plot, you know, where someone starts with the seed of, what if this were to happen? How would that look like? What would this happen? So I think different writers, different storytellers tend to, I'm a character person, so I tend to say, okay, here's a character I really want to know more about, or this is the type of person I want to write about, and I start with the character. A lot of people I know who are excellent start with plot or start with the world. So you can start at any of those points to tell an effective story. So really, yeah, and I think that's the good idea, is to think about that, to think about that the story is crafted and that it's going to be developed. So it's not something like, right now, if you knew everything there is to know about the story before you sit down, before you get to script, I would be more worried than if you don't know, if you don't have a lot more questions. Because I think going into story with curiosity, really approaching anything in life, especially as a filmmaker, writer. Chris, I know, works in documentaries a lot too, and I've worked in documentaries. You have to just approach it with a curiosity. This is something I'm really interested in. And you want to make sure when you say, what do I want to say and why am I telling the story, my biggest advice to you on that, on getting started, is pick something you're really interested in and that means something to you, because you're going to be living with this for a while. You're going to be kind of eating and breathing and living this film as you embark on it, which is an amazing thing. But you want to make sure that it's something that resonates with you, and that also that's going to translate to an audience more, I think, than anything else. I think the thing about Memento that resonated with people when they watched it most was that these were characters we really cared about. It was a world we cared about. We cared about what we were saying. And I think that came across when we were telling the story. So we're going to start by talking about character. This is where I personally start. So I can geek out pretty hard on character and pretty long. So Chris, feel free to bring me in if you need to, talking about character. The two components I think about, the way that I think about character is I usually break it down into external and internal components when I start to think about a character. So the external, we're talking about how they look, what they wear, how they carry themselves, a lot of different things that are external, really anything that how they present themselves or things that people see when they are going to see this character. Now, like I said, I've written fiction for a long time, long form short stories, as well as articles and other things that were not visual medium. Film is a visual medium. Film, you will have actors playing the parts of these characters. So my advice there is you don't want to get hung up on their physical characteristics unless they have some sort of meaning within the context of the story. A super obvious example of that I think of is The Fugitive, where it's like the one-armed man and they have to look for the one-armed man everywhere. Obviously, that's very important and crucial to the story. So if there's some kind of a physical attribute that's important for some reason, then you might want to think about that. But other than that, you want to think about what type of person this is. And the best physical traits, to me, the best physical things or the external factors are ones that also are linked in somehow to the internal. Anytime you can make these connections, especially you have 15 minutes to tell your story that you're thinking about. So anytime you can do double duty with things, you really want to. One thing that comes to mind when I think about that, I don't know why, I was reading something not long ago about Bob Dole, Senator Bob Dole, how he always kept a pen or a pencil in his right hand, which I thought was a strange thing, right? Like, why does he always have a pencil or a pen in his right hand? And it turned out he had an old injury that he'd sustained in battle or in the war, that he'd lost almost all use of his right arm. And as a politician, people were always coming up to him, wanting to shake hands, wanting to do things, and it was uncomfortable, or it just always created a situation. So he started to carry something in his hand because of this. So that's what I mean when I say like a physical trait or something they physically do that's tied in with some kind of reason that tells something, illuminates something about your character, tells something about them. Anytime you can do that, that's just going to make everything stronger. So that's really the external. Internally, their beliefs, their emotions, experiences, reactions, all of those things that are going to inform the why, which is why, like an experience, something they went through and internalized that has a physical manifestation, a belief, a way of moving, their emotions, how they move emotionally, their emotional landscape. So all of this, when you get to writing, say, dialogue, when you go to your script and you get to really having this character move through the world where things happen over time, they're going to be talking, they're going to be moving. Have you ever had someone tell you, oh, so-and-so, a friend of yours? I saw Susie the other day, and she said the funniest thing. Can you believe Susie said that? If you know Susie really well, you'll say, yes, I can believe she said that, or no, that doesn't sound like her. It's out of character. So your job really at this point, when you're developing these characters, is to get to know them well enough that just like Susie, if they would say that, if they would do that, if they wouldn't. look at a lot of shows, a lot of movies that have really good character development. Breaking Bad always comes to mind for me because Walter White is just, he's like the perfect story arc. His fatal flaw from the beginning, he is ignored. He feels like no one sees him. And I mean, push that to the absolute extreme, and you get that, you know, say my name sort of moment at the end where it's like he can't just let things happen. He has to let everyone know that it's him behind this, and that's what ultimately is his demise. So as you do and you start to think about characters, where do you start? Like if you don't have the idea for a character, I always think when I'm writing of like a toolkit, I think of that in my mind, like that I have this little toolkit and I have different things in there that I pull out at different times when I need them. And I think over time, you really start to understand that and know what works for you. It is not a one size fits all. I know when I was a young writer, when I was just starting out with writing, I wanted to ask every author, you know, what is your writing routine? How do you do it? What do you do? And what I really learned is it works differently for everyone. So personal life, you want to get in and like mine your personal life. Just think of everyone you ever knew who did something weird or funny or quirky or awkward. And why did they do that? Just kind of sit down and make a list, you know, of teachers. Oh, I was fascinated with all my teachers when I was growing up. So why did they do what they did? They had these strange ways of behaving or things that they said, and just start asking why do I think they did that? Why does this person do that? Everyone's fair game in your personal life. I always feel like that. Everyone is absolutely fair game. You don't have to, they'll change so much by the time you get finished with the script. Just, you know, really start thinking about the people in your life. Archetypes. I know some people had asked about the Jungian archetypes. They're fantastic. They're so good and they're so useful when it comes to writing things. So when you go sit down and we're talking about like your protagonist, antagonist, you have the love interests and the sidekicks and the mentor, all these different people. Different types of people who exist within a story. And it's very particular for me, very particular to story. Now I will say I sort of came in, I was an English major in college and I did a lot of Shakespeare and breaking down into archetypes. When I personally started to use archetypes to write, it was a hot mess. It was a really big hot mess. So that works so well for so many people. It does not work well for me because I don't know when it happened, but I became some kind of a rule follower at some point in my life. And I just started, it's like they all had to show up. And then it was just like this party where, you know, I'd be writing like a romantic comedy and it's like, well, you know, Gandalf pops up, like I have to have this like wizard or it got all muddled in my head and I didn't do well with that. However, I will say, and I mentioned it today, I know in Facebook, some people that were in the chat, if they had a chance to look at it, I had posted the Enneagrams. And if you're not familiar with Enneagram, it's just another, there's like Myers-Briggs personality, which I'm an INFJ, I know about that. There are all kinds of different ways of getting to know people and having a shorthand on character, which is what this is really about. So for me, Enneagram is what I use. I find it incredibly dynamic and an incredibly particular way of thinking about personality. And what I love most about Enneagram, which you can go to Enneagram Institute or any kind of Google search will pull up all the 9 Enneagram types or personality types. How I use that is Enneagram is very specific about where the types move when they're in stress or they're in health. So it's very dynamic, like when it explains people in different environments where they may go and what they might do. So for example, so we're not just, if you're not familiar with it, my daughter Chloe is an Enneagram type 1, which is known as the perfectionist. So for example, before I knew anything about Enneagram, before that was part of like one of the things in my toolbox, she was a toddler. We were at a store, I don't even remember where, and we were walking out But I remember she had an absolute meltdown, like inconsolable, crying her eyes out. Little toddler looks up at me and says, "You took something without paying. I can't, you took it without paying." She just keeps screaming, "You took it without paying." And she's bawling, crying. I'm like, I've never shoplifted in my life. I don't do that. Like, what are you talking about? I didn't take anything, until I realized, and I said, "Oh no, it's a pamphlet. Like, this is a pamphlet. You can take a pamphlet." She said, "No, mama, no, you didn't ask and you didn't pay." So before she just was never going to trust me again. We had to go back to the store and I had to say, "Can I take this pamphlet?" They're like, "Sure, you can have a pamphlet." So it's like, I don't know what your problem is. Like, why you do that? Well, years later, and I understand Enneagram, and Enneagram type 1, the perfectionist, has the basic desire to be good, have integrity, and be balanced. So to be good, be seen as good, not just be seen, but to be good and to have integrity. The basic fear of an Enneagram 1 is of being corrupt or evil or somehow defective. Like, that is the fear that drives so much of what they do. On top of that, they go to what's a different personality type, 4, in stress, which I happen to be a 4. We're kind of the Wednesday Addams, I think of us as of the Enneagrams. Very emotional, but like sit with emotion very well. But in stress, when a 1 goes to 4, they get overly identified with emotions and kind of shut down, which was this fit that I was seeing. So that, if you know that about a person, so you're saying your character, if you can type your character, say like, I have a character who's an Enneagram 1. Fast forward a few years and I'm with Chloe and we're at the beach and we go into a surf store, we're shopping, we're looking around, we get a few things, we pick some stuff out, we go next door and we're eating pizza. And I look up and she has on this little bucket hat that says Destin or wherever we were. And I just panic and I looked up at the hat and I said, "Oh no, I don't think we paid for that." Well, as you can imagine by what I've said about Chloe and what happened in the past, so you know that too, if she's an Enneagram 1 and you're thinking in those terms, she would completely freak out, which is what she did. She told me she just cried. She will probably talk to a therapist about it someday. It was really traumatic for her. Whereas someone else in that exact same situation, her brother, probably would have said, "Cool, free hat," or just any other number of reactions that you could have to that situation. So why am I telling you all of this? Because if you understand someone's motivation, their basic desires and their basic fears and what's motivating them and moving through the world, you can put them in different situations. And like I said, about Susie, how they would react. If it's like, "I can't believe she acted that way," you can say, "Actually, that sounds just like her. That sounds just like Susie. Susie does not like at all to feel like her integrity is compromised. That's really important to her." So in that, I just wanted to share that with you because Enneagram for me works really, really well. I promise they don't pay me. I don't get anything from them. It feels like an infomercial, but it works really, really well for me. And that shorthand of thinking about how a character moves through the world, what they need, what they want, what makes them feel secure, what makes them feel happy. And then once you know that, you can really put them in a pressure cooker. It's another way to get to know your characters. A lot of people that work in the industry talk about like the elevator test. I think they talk about where you put them in an elevator, like have the elevator stop or elevator with other people and see how they react. Someone's stuck in an elevator. Do they panic? Do they take charge? What do they do? Have your character get fired from a job. They're getting written up for something that they didn't do, or any number of things, and just play what if with your character. And that's one way to get to know them. It also starts to edge on plot, things that you may want to happen within your story, but even things that are completely separate from what you intend to talk about, the action you want in your film. It really does help fill that out and have you get to know the character. It will also help when you get to, if you're writing and directing, if you're putting this together, when you get to talking to your actor, when you get to that point of being able to tell them what's motivating that character, it's going to be incredibly useful to the actor when you can just say, instead of saying, "Do this," in this scene, you want this. There's a thing you want, and that's why you're saying this. You're trying to get this other thing. That's really going to help the actors with their process be able to have a fully realized character and bring that to life in the way that you want it to be. Okay, so now that you have a character, you've really thought about your characters and you're thinking about, this is a person, really should be someone that either you want to hang out with or you would want to watch. So they don't have to be good. Your characters don't all have to be good. They can be, they can have, my favorite characters are people who do bad things for good reasons. Like I'm a sucker for somebody who does a terrible thing for like a really good reason. Like I'm an absolute sucker for that. So once you kind of think about this person and these characters that are going to fill up your world, and I also recommend, because we're going back to that this is a short film, you don't want to have too many characters to follow around, one or two like really good characters to play off each other. And within that too, the character types, you want to think about like, or the elements to the character, if they're going to be a dynamic character, if something's going to change with them, if they're going to be static, if they stay the same for the whole of your 15 minutes. So you want to also think about those things. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the actual plot and what's happening to them. So world, you're going to build a place for the character to move through. Now, this is something that can be literal. I'll say, my son, Finnegan, he takes it very literally because he does stop motion animation. So he literally has to build the world from the ground up. In fact, he did his first film last year alongside me. We did our first films for Film Prize. He won the middle school division with his stop motion animation, Night of the Living Chest Hair. It's very different from a movie about moms. It was a science fiction Lego stop motion. So he had to make every single decision about what he was going to do, what world he was going to be in. There's also like science fiction is the first thing with a lot of people that come to mind. They say, okay, what are the rules of this world is really what I'm talking about. Like, what is the rules? What does this world look like? You can really dig into that even if you're not doing science fiction. If you are doing science fiction, maybe it's somewhere time travel is possible. Gravity doesn't exist. A million different things that we've seen, something from Avatar down to like a Doctor Who, one of my favorites, to really anything that's just a Back to the Future, where there's just some little element that works a little differently than it does in our world. Sit down and play with those things. For example, though, Memento was set in what I would consider the real world. It wasn't science fiction, but we still had to create a system of rules around the world. Like, this is a place where these things happen. This is where this is likely. You would see this, you might not see that. It's a world of getting kids out the door, running carpool, all these things we knew of as moms. Like, this is what the world looks like that we want to show. And these are the things that are in that world. Even if it's things like, is this somewhere where we're writing about women where they get their nails done every single week, or or is it a really big deal to have that done? Those things seem really small and petty, but they really fill out if you understand the world in which you're telling the story. Again, it will be stronger. And then, as always, if something in that world reflects something inside the character, if there's something about that interior of the character that is mirrored or that's reflected in that world, anytime you can connect those two, the character to the world or to the action, their insides to their outsides, you're going to make a stronger film. You're going to make it a lot stronger, and you're going to do more with less. You're going to really be able to do more with less, which is important when we're talking about a short film format. So, for example, in Memento, if you're familiar at all with the film Memento, that was our title, Memento, came out of a joke that really was the seed for our story, which is that why can't we remember anything? As moms, we can never remember what's supposed to happen, what we're supposed to be doing, where we are. So in the film Memento, the Christopher Nolan film, there's someone who wakes up, the main character wakes up, and he has no short-term memory. He's experienced trauma and can't have short-term memory. So the rules of the world are very different. He wakes up, he has to write notes for himself, and he writes things all over, tattoos things all over himself, and has sticky notes everywhere. And he's trying to piece together really the mystery of what happened to his wife. I believe it is. It's the one murdered. So he's trying to put all this together. Who's good? Who's bad? In Memento, the structure, that the world is obviously different. Like the stakes are very different. It's just a mom who spills coffee on her planner and she can't remember anything. She moves through this world trying to remember what she's forgotten, only to know she's forgotten so much. Like it's really useless for her to even try anymore, kind of at the end of that. So even though we kind of mirrored that and we took that as a starting point, the worlds themselves are very, very different. We're talking about someone who's trying to remember something over the course of a story. They're moving through the world where things are happening over time. And the goal really is to remember something. But two very different stories, because we have two very different characters and we have two very different worlds that we've created. In this one world, like people get murdered and there's so much at stake, lives are at stake. In this other world, it's all about carpool and getting cake to school on time, making sure the kids have snacks and that sort of thing. So what we did with that was we really wanted to tell this everyday kind of pedestrian story with the feel of, what if we try to create where the stakes are higher than they really are, or like we really feel as parents, for those of you who are moms, for those of you who aren't, like sometimes you feel like you're driving with a kidney through night, trying to get it to someone. Really, you're just getting a kid to soccer. Is it the same? No, not at all. But it can feel that way. So we tried to mimic it. But again, the worlds being so different is where some of that tension came from in our movie. So that's really about the world building, like all I have. It's one of those things too that's really hard to talk about sometimes. I'll talk a little bit more about it with the things happen. When you think about world, genre is also really important. So if you are thinking about doing a genre piece, you want to think about those rules. Chris and I actually had talked before about Scream. If you think about the Scream franchise, they do this in a very meta kind of way. They take the rules of a horror film and they make an entire movie and then subsequent movies poking fun at the expectations, talking about what's expected in a horror film, and then they sort of give you everything that you want and more of a horror film. So when you think about that, like you can also think about whatever the genre is that you're writing in, that you want to live inside. What are the rules of that genre? Genre pieces can be really good to do in a short film because they're another way of giving you that shorthand. Like I was talking about what Enneagrams do for character development. The genre piece can really help out your audience because it gives you that shorthand. You got 15 minutes. You have 15 minutes. So if you're like sci-fi or romantic comedy, these are kind of the rules of a romantic comedy. These are the rules of a horror film. The Legend of Luther Anderson won film prize, the first year of film prize, The Legend of Luther Anderson. And I believe Chris is going to now or later, he's going to share a link where you can go and watch all of the, or a lot of the film prize shorts from past years. Absolutely do that. It is worth every second of your time. That's what I did. And I have to say, Legend of Luther Anderson was one of my personal favorites because it made me just laugh out loud. I grew up watching Westerns with my father and my mom. Like they loved spaghetti Westerns and all that. So it took all of those conventions and just had an absolute blast with it. So it was just so much fun to watch. I thought it was so much fun to watch because it knew what it was. And so I think that's such a good shorthand for your audience. They've watched a million romantic comedies. They've seen all these different things. They know what the rules are. So you can use them or break them. But when you do it, you're doing it effectively and you're aware of them. And so, especially within 15 minutes, I think it can be really, really useful when you talk about building out a world. So let's move on to things happening over time, which is the last part really of the story. We have the character, you know what world you're in, and it's important that you're conveying that to the audience. You know what world, you know the character. Now, things need to happen because no one wants to see a movie where nothing happens. In fact, I have this, I think it's too small for me to show y'all, but this always sits on my desk. The 4 undramatic plot structures. It was a great New Yorker cartoon. The 4 undramatic plot structures. It's like ignoring the monster. The hero is confronted by an antagonistic force and ignores it until it goes away. And there are 3 others like that. It's really funny because we've probably seen, I've probably written some of these movies that had that dramatic plot structure. The hero's journey. So we can talk about that, like Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey, where we go through, the hero must go alone at night and blood must be shed, all these things on the hero's journey, which can help you provide structure. Let's see. A messy desk helps too, just FYI. The part where it's like the call to adventure, the initiation, you have the unification or transformation, and then the road back, the hero's return. We all think of like a Lord of the Rings or something like that, like really follows this classic hero's journey. I would say I'm so literal sometimes that I get bogged down in the hero's journey, especially for 15 minutes. We had someone had actually asked if the hero's journey, like if that was useful as well, like the archetypes in the hero's journey. I find them very useful for long form. If I'm sitting down to write chapters of something, or if I'm writing maybe even a feature or something longer, I think it's really, really important. It's just, if you go to use that within 15 minutes, just boiling every single part of that, part 1, 2, 3, and 4 down to their absolute essence so that it happens fast. So each of those things happen fast. So for me, when I think of a short film, I think it's more useful for me to think about what the character wants, what the character needs, and what the obstacles are. And I think a singular want, a singular need, and maybe 2 obstacles or 1 really big obstacle can be more useful. So I want to show you. So I mentioned that I did English in college, and I'm just kind of a grammar nerd. So I love to diagram things. I love to diagram sentences. I know it's embarrassing, but it's true. So I also do, I will show you, this is kind of how I think about movies in the same way of diagramming. And I recommend getting visual and doing something like that with movies that you think of. I did The Princess and the Frog. So that's my favorite Disney princess movie. And so I was thinking about that. And so what does Tiana want? Tiana wants to own her own restaurant. That's what she wants. And what does she need? Those can be different questions. The Rolling Stones don't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you just might get what you need. I mean, just think about that really when you're putting your short film together, and you'll be okay if you can capture that. So she wants her own restaurant. What are the obstacles? Money. She's a frog, and that's a big one right there. Not many frogs run the restaurants. And then also the shadow man, the voodoo. That speaks to the world as well. So you have this princess, but she's in a different world than what we've seen Disney princesses before, right? They chose to the world of New Orleans. What's special about the world of New Orleans? There's voodoo and hoodoo, and there's all these different things. They have Mardi Gras, they have the food, they have all these different things, right? So what's in the world? Food, Mardi Gras, voodoo. You've got Princess and the Frog. She wants to own a restaurant, food. She makes beignets. They get to throw in all of that. Then the voodoo is what ultimately is one of the obstacles. They use that to turn in the frog, the shadow man, several things happen like that. And they fill out this world. So what does she need? And when I was doing that, like she says she wants to own a restaurant, but what she really needs is to learn that work isn't everything. That's the thing that really kind of brings it all home for her and brings everything together. And then she's able to get not only her own restaurant, but also love the prince. She gets the prince and she gets her restaurant. She doesn't have to choose between the 2 because she integrates that what she wants with what she needs, what she actually needs. And I would say that what they need, the character, usually what they need is something they're not aware of. It's not, and I think if you go and you take movies that you like and kind of break that down into the simplest form, what does the main character want? what does the main character actually need that they aren't aware of in order to achieve that? So you can see too, like the reason I've done that is like these obstacles are happening all the way. And this journey is kind of that emotional underpinning that happens the entire time these obstacles are going on. They're really teaching the main character parts of this lesson. So if you can kind of think about film this way, films that already exist, I recommend going into movies that you like, movies that you've seen. I used Princess and the Frog, just something really simple to try and break it down. But if you do that, and then when you go to your film, you'll be able to kind of do that same thing. Okay, what do they really want? What's standing in the way of those things? And what do they really need to get there? The overtime portion. So things happening, the characters moving through time, it's all about that. When you look at beats, so when I say a beat for the film, and I don't want to step too much, I know the screenwriting class, I think they'll probably cover like what the beats are and the rhythm of the screenplay. But each beat, when you sit down to think of things happening, and the classic thing to do, what I do, what most people I know do, is take an index card for each beat, which is each kind of moment, each time something happens. And again, I keep saying this, but if you can tie those beats, those moments, those plot points, however you want to say it, to something that's happening internally in the character. So this happens, they learn something, they get frustrated, something happens within the character. So this happens, what does that mean for the character? And if you can connect those two things, then it will resonate more with your audience than if things are just happening and then there's also some emotional stuff going on, maybe not, but it's just a series of things. If those things are also meaningful to the character, if they're teaching them something or illuminating something. My example with my daughter Chloe, when we realized about the hat and she has a complete breakdown, and so it's like, not only do we realize that we didn't pay for the hat, but it brings out something in her that's a primal fear. It's like something she's super afraid of, or that has to do with her character. That's going to make it a stronger film. Remember, we said at the beginning, the effective story is crafted to make the audience feel something. So if every time something happens, it's revealing something about your character, that is what is going to really make your audience resonate with what you're saying. So it's going to make it's also what's going to make your actor resonate with the script and the other people that are in your film, and hence they're going to get better performance. It's just great all around when you can do that. So over time, talking about structure here, I know in the chat some people mentioned that, I think it was Deborah, if she's on here, was talking about turning a short story into a short film. And that was a particular interest to me. I know, having written long form before and then having to write short stories, I had a huge learning curve. I didn't understand. I thought a short story was just kind of a shorter version, just less pages. And it wasn't. It has a structure all to its own. It was a learning curve. I have to say, it was a big learning curve for me coming from writing longer things. For a long time in my professional life, I wrote magazine articles, 1,200 words, or I wrote a weekly newspaper column that was 750 words. So if I sat down to write something during that 10-year span, I could think in 1,200 words or 750 words. The structure was always very different. That 1,200 word had a different feel and structure than that 750 words. So the same with the short film. We've all seen a lot of feature films. We watch a lot of movies. We sit down and watch that hour and a half or, hour and 20, 3-6-3 structure, which is, you've got 30 minutes of the first act, 60 minutes of that middle, 30 minutes of the end, roughly. That's kind of what we're trained to think. So now we're going into a 15-minute structure. So it's that same thing of taking the 1,200 words of that novel into a short story, or taking that article and making it into a column. Just a different structure. It's a different thing. So when you do that, the biggest thing I can say, watch short films. If you're thinking about this because you've haven't made film and you want to just try it out, and the short feels, that's what I went into this with, was a feature film. Making it, directing it, producing it on my own just felt way too much, but a short film felt doable. And Louisiana Film Prize, these guys do such a good job of helping you through the process of doing it. Like, just everything about the festival I thought was attractive, and I thought, okay, I can do this. I can make a short film. So what I did was sat and watched all the short films I could kind of gobble up, and thought about, so as we do this with structure, the classic, I was drawing earlier today. I was waiting for this. I just scribbled everything down I could. So this is your classic plot structure that you've probably all had to do in an English class at some point in your life. You've probably had to break it down like this, where you have this exposition. So here we're meeting the characters, we're understanding the world, all those things we talked about earlier. Who are the characters? What are the rules of this world? How do things work? We have a conflict, which is your inciting incident. In Memento, we had a mom. So the exposition, the mom wakes up in the morning. She has to get her kids to school. The kids are grabbing lunches. They're doing all this. They're sitting in carpool. She's dropping them off. We know this world. We know the rules. Like, this is the world of a mom with kids and school. Like, these are how things work. She spills coffee on her planner and doesn't know. She has everything together. She knows the day's planned out. Coffee all over her planner. And that kind of throws everything in there. So you've got your conflict. And that is the end of your first act. You go up on your rising action. This is all those obstacles. So here in Memento, our main character, Sarah, she wanted to remember. She wanted to know what she'd forgotten, what was in that planner. She meets some friends, they talk, she tries to make calls to orthodontists and coaches. She's having to work in between there. She's getting distracted. All these things keep happening. Climax, she's in line. She's kind of given up. She gets a call and has to go. She gets a call and she has to run a king cake over to her kids at school. She gets there, something happens. It all starts to fall down where she just kind of gives up and goes to bed. And the resolution really, there's kind of a funny moment, hopefully funny moment at the end. But the resolution is just sort of, she's forgotten so much stuff, who knows what it is, and she'll never really know. So the resolution is just sort of an understanding that it doesn't matter because she has too much on her plate anyway. And even if she remembers that one thing, she forgot 10 others. So that is also a really good thing to do for short films, if you can do that with the shorts. And then you want to think about, it sounds really obvious, very obvious, where to start, where to end, where you want to start and where you want to end. And I know those are choices. They're choices that you're going to make, because if you, I did this thing when I was just starting out, especially with fiction. So when I started out writing fiction, if someone went to the grocery store, by God, they were going home and they were putting the groceries away. Like, I couldn't leave it. So, I mean, I don't know how many excruciating pages my poor writing teachers had to read of like people stacking soup and whatever while they were having a conversation, just because that they'd been to the grocery store. And so you really, in those choices, like where to start, what you're going to show, what you're not going to show. What you don't show is as important as you do as what you do show. So you want to think about how things are unfolding. What information to withhold, what information to reveal. The easiest way I know to decide this and to do that is to watch other short films in your genre that are similar or that aren't, and really write that down, look at them and say, okay, what did they hold on to until the end, and why did they do that? What did they reveal, and how did they do that over time? And you'll really start to see the structure unfold for you, and the structure that's important for you to illuminate, to see what's happening there. I will say one final film that I want to talk about, which is a short film that won, I don't know what year it won, film prize, but it will be on the link. Chris has a link to it that he has agreed to share. And the name of it, it's Exit Strategy, is a short film, and it's probably my favorite short film from Louisiana Film Prize. I absolutely love this film. I don't know how many times I've watched it, just because I think it's absolute genius. because it is, and I'll say, the perfect marriage of the character in the world where they're moving through a world um, and things are happening over time. It just brings that together with the perfect, to me, an absolute flawless short film structure. And Travis Bible, who wrote and directed it, I believe is teaching a class in a couple of weeks or a few weeks. I saw that he's on the slate. So you'll really can't wait. I'm going to be sitting in on the rest of the classes, I think. I was just looking at it. I was like, I'm going to hear what everybody has to say. It looks great. Okay, so exit strategy. Spoiler alert, and I'm sorry, but I promise it's good enough. It will not ruin it when you go watch it. This main character wants to save his brother. And this is me breaking it down. So Travis might have something totally different to say about it. I don't know him, so I didn't get to ask him or anything about it. But so he wants to save his brother is really what he wants. And the obstacles are like time, a car, radio, police. There are all these different things in the way. What happens is it starts with a character who is obviously very smart, very cerebral. He identifies with his intellect. He meets his brother for lunch. He's very distracted. He has developed a way of time travel. And you find out, so the world is set up very quickly that it's kind of the normal world, but there are these different rules to it. So this brother's able to time travel. And he looks across at his brother who doesn't know. And we find out, it unfolds over time, that he is trying to save his brother because this is the day he keeps time traveling back to this moment because this is the day his brother dies. So he has tried everything to save his brother. So the obstacles, time, there's a car in one of the iterations, his brother gets hit by a car. The radio, his brother hears that there's a fire. His brother's a fireman. And I believe the thing started because his brother was fighting a fire, and that's how he died the first time. He comes back to this moment. So his brother dies a different way every single time this happens. We only see it a few times, and then it's told in retrospect. He has this notebook, which is so clever. He has a notebook, and he goes through and tells his brother, he's calculating, because again, the character is very smart. He prides himself on his intellect. He goes through, and he's going to figure this out. He's a figure outer. He's going to figure this out. Because what he wants to do is save his brother. But what he really needs, in my opinion, what he needs here is to connect emotionally with his brother. Like he's trying to save his brother, but he's also not connecting with the brother that's right there. So in the moment where he finally gives up what he thinks he wants, he gets time with his brother, which is really the goal of this, was to have more time with his brother. But instead of getting it in the way he thought he wanted, he gets it in the way he needs, where there's like genuine connection with his brother who's sitting right across the table from him. But he hasn't been able to see that because he's been in this other place. So basically, just go watch Exit Strategy and replicate that. I mean, what else can I say? As if it were that simple. But I think taking your idea and looking at that, and when you look at Exit Strategy, if you go watch that, I would recommend saying, okay, what would this have looked like as a feature film? Because we all know that feature film would have started with his brother dying. Then we would follow him through developing the time travel technology. Then we would go back and we would be living real time with him during all of these iterations of when he tries to save his brother until he decides. So that's kind of what it would have looked like. But he's chopped that up, and really we don't lose anything. We still have that complete story. We still have that complete structure. We have that character arc. It's just condensed in such a great way for the format that is the short film. So other than that, like, I think thinking about the character as someone who moves through the world where things happen over time. It sounds really simple, but if you can kind of use that to break down all of those elements and really think about it, the most important thing to me is that you make your film, that you tell your story, no matter how you do it. Do it. If I could go back and do Memento, would I change anything? Probably, I'd probably change a lot of things. If I did it now, it'd be a different story. But the great thing is, like, I made this short film. It's something I did, super proud of. We got in the top 5, our first film. It's amazing. Is that now we get to tell another story, move on to the next story and tell something else. So no matter how you end up doing it, no matter what character you choose, what world you choose, what obstacles are in their way, I just really encourage you to tell your story. Try short film. You won't regret it. It'll be so much fun. It'll be really hard. It'll be amazing. And you'll learn so much about yourself and your characters and your storytelling abilities. And I can't wait to see what everybody comes up with.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa, for leading that really engaging presentation. I love how you told us what you were going to tell us. You told us and you told us again.
And what you need to do in your film. Well, you just
right.
got to do that in your film.
Repetition works, and there's so many really great pieces in there. For those who are on the class, I'm going to be putting a document in the chat as well as on the event or the class page on Facebook with all of the links and everything in case you don't grab them out of the Zoom tonight. So you'll have those there. I do have a few questions for you, Melissa, as we kind of round out the day. And of course, folks, if you guys have questions, you feel free to throw those in the chat as well. So I'll start with these that I have from earlier, which is how does someone take the multitude of ideas that they might have to make a story and land on something? How do you choose the best idea that you have and that there you can move forward with it?
No, it's a great question. And I think a lot of different things can work. I mean, I've definitely had times where I've had to throw a dart, put them on a wall and throw a dart if you have to, like just choose one. I also think, especially because this is short film, it's a visual medium, it's going to be, there's a lot of things you're going to talk about when you come to pre-production. If you think about your resources. So if you know someone who's an actor, you have a great actor or actress in mind, what character would suit them out of these things that you've thought about? If you have a place, a location, or a world where you can shoot, what story could you tell in that place? Start with world and say, okay, this is a world that we know. This is a world where we can build something and make something out of. And then if you have just like that nagging thing that just you keep coming back to, but make sure it's something you really, really enjoy and that you're curious about, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with it. So I think really the one that makes you go, I want to see that movie. That's something I would want to watch, and that's something I want to spend a lot of time with.
Yeah, that's a great point. And
yeah,
when I add in here too, that one of the things that makes Film Prize super unique as a festival is that we offer what we call kind of a white glove service. So especially for those filmmakers who are just getting started or who are coming in from somewhere, and especially if you're coming to the Shreveport, Caddo Parish area, our team has a lot of resources, a lot of information on how to connect you with talent, with locations. We also have a liaison in South Louisiana, based out of New Orleans, Beth Brevant, who can help you out down there. So if you are looking for stuff, if you are stuck on things that you are needing to make your film happen, or you need to find that place where you can be inspired, let us know, and then we'll do our best to help you out there. Next question. One of the challenges for first-time filmmakers is trying to put too much into the story. And I know you touched on this a little bit, but could you give us maybe a couple of quick tips on how to consolidate your idea down to, especially a short film length? Obviously, feature films have been written with 400 pages to start, but just thinking about the short film format, especially, like how do you take an idea that just feels so large and bring it down to size?
Well, I think for one of the things, definitely, like I said, watching short films and really seeing what you can include and what you can't. We had that issue. As someone who'd written scripts, but I hadn't directed and actually produced and done all the parts of it before, I can't tell you how many times on the set of Memento, I'm like, who wrote this? Like, what is that? I want to like strangle the screenwriter. It was me. Because we had, I don't even remember, 5 locations. It was ridiculous. Like there was no, I don't know why we did that to ourselves. So I would say, do as much as you can with what you have, and really, I don't know, like to pare it down. It's so hard, but I think having that litmus test, like finding that litmus test of what you're trying to say and just how you can say it in as few words and as few things as possible. Don't be afraid to take things away. You can always put them back in the script when you get to working on it. Take it away and see if you have that we actually joked about that after we were writing, if we were going to write another short film, the thing they say, you know, like kidnapping, like never go to a second location. Like we were starting to say that, like try to keep it in one place. Yeah, I really think just take different parts of it and see what stands on its own. Like as take your idea and write it all down, but then try and get rid of as much as you possibly can. Because also, you have to remember that I don't know, 15 minutes is a strange amount, and people are watching not only at Film Press specifically, they're going to watch a slate of films. So you want it as absolutely tight as possible when you go in at the end. I don't think I really answered that, but it's just if you take this away, ask yourself constantly, if I take this piece away, is the story still complete? Does it still say what I want to say, and is it complete? And if that's true, let it go.
Yeah, it's always hard to kill babies. Not
It's so hard.
That's kind of the terminology, but it's something where, you know, especially when you do have 15 minutes and you are in and you say Film Prize, but it could be YouTube. I mean, another video is a click away, right? So like,
it's absolutely true. There's so much content just in general. There's so much content. But the other thing is, you really want to think about resources again. You want to try and go into shooting with as tight of a script and with as tight of everything as possible. So really try to do it early. Try to whittle down your script as much as possible before you go into production.
Yeah,
because
time is money.
It really hurts after you've shot it all and you have to take a scene out or take something else out. That's going to hurt worse.
All right. So our last question for you, Melissa, is you're going to hate me. Give us a reading material or a viewing material that you haven't already mentioned in the class for folks to, you know, one of the pieces that is oft cited for early screenwriters is Save the Cat. This book, Save the Cat. Are there things like that people should read or watch as they are preparing their story concept heading into the next class?
The Foundations of Screenwriting, Sid Field. I use that one a lot. Anything by him. The Writer's Journey, Chris Vogler, like that's one that really talks like about the hero's journey into there. But I would say my favorite writing book is Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. If you haven't read that and you just want to write anything, like I think that's fantastic. As far as watching, I really think just watching films. There are also some great podcasts, and I can't remember any of them now. Can I give that to you, Chris, and you can post it maybe afterwards?
That'd be great.
The Writers Panel podcast is one I listen to a lot. And then I really think any of the, they have so many like script notes and screenwriting life. Those are some that I listen to a lot too. But I think it's great to just listen to other writers talk about writing. Anything that, any of the behind the scenes, like go on to your favorite thing, but listen to behind the scenes. If they have a director's cut where they're talking about the different scenes, listen to it. Absolutely. Like listening to other people who are in the industry, who are making films, talk about it is just, it's so valuable. It's something that you can really learn from other people's experience. And then also just know that everything that you're going through, other people are going through, and they have the same challenges and problems, really will help you get to the finish line. I think more than anything, making sure you connect with your own material, that if something's not working, try something else, try a different format. Even if someone says they swear by, say, the archetypes or something, you know, or they swear by this method, just find something that works for you and whatever's going to help you get to the finish line.
All right. Thank you so much, Melissa Goslin, for putting on this wonderful class once more. Everybody give her a nice virtual round of applause. And we're going to end this the way we end all prize things, Melissa, which is
I think I get to do one.
actually the first one I've done in 2022. So I'm very excited. So for those of you who don't know, at the end of everything prize, we say Viva la Film Prize, loud and proud, fists in the air. And so we're going to do it all on three. You can all join in at home. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Viva
Viva
la Film
la
Prize!
Film Prize!
Woohoo! All right, guys, thanks so much. Be sure to tune in next month for the next class. We'll see you in the chat on Facebook. Until then, thanks so much and take care.